little reported and little understood aspect to the foreclosure crisis, claim consumer advocates, is that foreclosure is in fact a lucrative profit center for the servicers who are making millions off a laundry list of fees. The banks who service home loans dispute this, but we've been talking to homeowners across the country who say their servicers pushed them into foreclosure instead of working with them to modify their loans.
I can't tell you how many times I pulled into my driveway that I honestly looked at my front door to see if that sticker was on my front door, to see if my house was going to be sold in a sheriff's auction.
Belinda Brooks is the mayor of Luckey, Ohio, a small town of about 1,500 residents just outside of Toledo.
Good. Well, trouble and double trouble.
But being mayor is only a part-time job.
See ya.
She's also a small business owner who moved here 9 years ago to get away from the big city.
Did you do all these January reports yourself?
When Brooks moved to Luckey, she fell in love with the community.
Let's get all your stuff ready.
I don't want to go to school.
Oh, yes, you do. You like school?
Here, the mother of three found good schools and a low crime rate.
Oh, you're so big.
Her business is administering health plans for small companies.
Who's coming in 23 days?
Santa. Santa.
Oh, really? You think?
Yeah.
Do you?
But when the economy soured, her business started to slow.
Sam, you want to slide through?
So Belinda Brooks did what she thought was the right thing. She began planning for the worst.
It was clear to me that the economy was taking a hit, so we were engaging and getting ready for less income. So I was just trying to make sure that I was ready for that so I wouldn't be in a bad situation down the road.
Brooks' mortgage payment was $1,500 a month. She tried to refinance, but she was underwater, meaning her home was worth less than the amount of the loan. But she heard of a new government program that promised to reduce the payments for 5 years just to keep homeowners in their homes and slow the national foreclosure bleeding. It's called the Home Affordable Modification Program, or HAMP. The government wanted banks, the same ones that had just been bailed out with taxpayer money, to return the favor and help homeowners like Belinda Brooks. But instead, many homeowners across the country say loan modifications have been a nightmare that's led them to financial ruin.
And in the end result, I might be moving out of my home, getting foreclosed on, which could damage my business, which ultimately could ruin me.
Belinda Brooks' story is similar to many we heard. You need a quick lesson in 21st century economics. Gone are the days of personal relationships between banker and borrower, as was depicted in the classic movie, It's a Wonderful Life.
Mr. and Mrs. Martini, welcome home.
Bread, that this house may never know hunger.
And wine, that joy and prosperity may reign forever. Enter the Martini Castle.
Today, there often is no relationship between the borrower and the lender. The banks that sold you the loan earned a fee for doing so, and then flipped it to Wall Street. Wall Street sliced and diced the loans and then sold them to investors around the world. Those investors own your loan, but the bank that sold you your mortgage is still in the picture, often serving as the middleman, collecting payments and deciding who and who does not get a modification.
So the bank doesn't actually hold the paper,
That's right.
but it services the loan.
It services a loan, and you don't have any control over who services your loan.
According to Diane Thompson of the National Consumer Law Center, that is a problem when it comes to modifying loans.
And so you're going to be making your payments to somebody who really doesn't have any interest in seeing you perform on that loan.
When Congress wanted to know about loan modification programs, they called Diane Thompson to testify, and she spared the servicers no mercy.
Servicers do not believe that the rules that apply to everyone else apply to them. This lawless attitude, created in part by financial incentives and too often tolerated by regulators, is the root cause of the Robo-Signing scandal, the failure of HAMP, and the wrongful foreclosure of countless American families.
Thompson says there are three players in this drama: the homeowners who are losing their homes, the investors who are losing money on bad loans, and the banks, or servicers, who can actually make money off of foreclosures.
These abuses occur because servicers have strong financial incentives to deny permanent modifications and in many cases to proceed with foreclosure. The illegal fees that push many homeowners into foreclosure are profit centers for servicers.
And those servicers, Thompson told us, can do quite well, even when homeowners and investors are losing their shirts.
Maybe wrong, but I think most people have the feeling, well, if a home goes into foreclosure, everybody loses. What you're telling me is the bank often makes a lot of money.
Yeah, the servicer, the entity that's actually collecting the payments, does not lose money in a foreclosure. They get all of the fees that they've charged off the top in a foreclosure before anybody else does. So
and those fees add up.
Those fees can add up to thousands of dollars, and they get taken off the top in a foreclosure. So the servicer gets paid first before anybody else gets paid.
Back in Ohio, Belinda Brooks was making sure her house was in order. Worried that her income would be taking a hit with the souring economy, she submitted an application for a modified loan that would lower her monthly payment. Her servicer was Aurora Loan Services in Colorado. She told us that from the start, they said they kept losing her application.
They didn't have it. They lost it. Then I have to refax it. So this process went on for 7 months, and phone calls and phone calls and phone calls, to where it was maddening, really. It was just crazy.
After months and months of sending and resending her application, the mayor from Lucky was anything but. Aurora kept her in limbo until finally, she says, the servicer suggested something surprising.
They kept telling me if I were behind on my payments, I would be placed up higher on their preference and priority on getting placed into a modification program quicker. And I kept saying, well, I don't want to be late on my payments. That's, not the purpose of what I'm trying to do. And they just kept saying, hey, you need to miss.
Brooks says she finally decided she had no other option, so she purposely missed a payment.
And so when I did pay that month late, and then all of a sudden, poof, I got my trial modification, I was very, I want to say encouraged that, oh gosh, you know what? Maybe that was it. Maybe I just needed to do that, because then I got my trial modification, and I thought maybe this will work out then.
The trial modification is the first step in HAMP, that federal loan modification program. Borrowers must show that they are able to make the adjusted payment on time for 3 months. Then they are put in a permanent modification. Mayor Brooks' modified mortgage payment dropped almost $400 a month.
Paid all 3 of them on time, perfectly on time.
But it didn't matter, because Brooks was in for another shock. While one banker was working to modify her loan, another, at the same time at the same loan company, was beginning the process of foreclosure. It's called a dual track.
Every time I was sending them my modified amount, it was not going to any of my principal. So every time I got a bill, nothing was registering or making sense. So it kept saying I owed. And when I called Aurora about that, they said, don't panic about that. We have to show it like that. Once you get into your modification, it'll go back to normal. All that will be included into your loan, and it will be remodified.
Brooks completed her trial period and waited for the bank to send her a permanent modification. When it didn't come, she called the bank to see how much her next payment should be.
It was right about that time in December when they changed my payments, and I got really, really nervous because I thought, this is just really strange. And then I got, in January, first week of January, they sent me a letter saying, we want you to send in all your paperwork again. You need to submit all your paperwork for a modification. I thought, are you kidding me? Do you know how many times I have sent this stuff in? You need me to send all of it again? These packets are like this thick.
It's set up so that the homeowner makes 3 trial payments under a modified loan, then they should be converted to permanent. But what's happened is that homeowners are pushed into trial plans that never convert.
Philip Robinson is the executive director of Civil Justice, a legal services firm in Maryland. His organization helps run the largest foreclosure prevention project in the country.
Well, that's on him, though, isn't it?
He says what happened to Brooks happens thousands of times across the country. Borrowers told to miss payments, paperwork lost over and over, and trial modification periods that go on and on.
you're supposed to convert at 3 months, but because they're not converting people at 3 months to permanent loans, they're stuck in limbo for extended periods of time, sometimes over a year. While they're in limbo, they're continuing to make their trial payments. The fees and interest on the loan may keep accruing, and it's another way to pad the fees for the servicers.
And attorney Diane Thompson says, borrower beware.
Yeah, so if you're told to stop making payments so that you can get a modification.
So you can qualify.
So you can qualify. You will get late fees. You will then be labeled in default, and that will show up on your credit, which will have all kinds of negative repercussions that will rattle through your life. And then also because you're in default, you are then at risk for being foreclosed on, even if you weren't beforehand.
If your HAMP trial modification doesn't work out, you're still on the hook for your original payments, plus late fees and other charges, and that's what happened to Mayor Brooks.
I mean, they're telling me I owe, $4,000, and then $6,000, $9,000, $11,000, $12,000, $14,000. This whole time it kept going up, and none of it made sense. There's no way I could possibly owe that kind of money. That is when I got extremely nervous, and I started getting online and started doing some research about Aurora, and that's the point when my heart sank into my stomach, and I about got sick.
Brooks found chat rooms and postings about dozens of borrowers just like her who were making the lower modification payments, only to find out that the servicer, the same servicer that was supposed to be helping them, was beginning the process of foreclosure.
And that's when I panicked. I literally panicked, and that's why I said, I want out. I want out. I want to stop doing this. I'm gonna, I'm writing a check for the full amount. I want out of this program. I will make restitution on whatever damage was done from those trial modification payments. I will pay the late fees. I have a letter saying I'll pay the late fees. I'll do what I need to do, but I just want to get this cleaned up because this has been a mess.
Brooks went back to paying her full mortgage payment, but one banker wasn't talking to another, and she was placed in default. As incomprehensible as it sounds, 2 months later, after making all her modified payments on time, the Aurora loan servicer foreclosed on Belinda Brooks' home.
I about sank. I just started crying. I thought I'm gonna lose my home. And that's the only home we've had. My poor kids just, they hear me talk about it, and, it breaks my heart to watch my little son. He's 6, and his little chin starts, quivering. He's like, I don't want to leave our house. I love our house, Mommy, That's what, I don't care if I have to make a different home my home, but, to have to make them leave the only home they've known because of somebody's clerical error and somebody that just doesn't really care, that's craziness.